This is a recording of a peer-to-peer review done by a coalition of health professionals for regenerative agriculture, where we focus on educating health professionals and general public about nutrient density, regenerative organic agriculture, and One Health. And every week we run these scientific articles where we discuss topics as One Health or soil health, human health microbiome, nutrient density, the principles of regenerative agriculture or agroecology. We look into nutrition science, public health, and in general, sustainable food system. And today, this is our recording. Well, it's actually first recording in 2023. I put the wrong date, but anyway. But today we look at the soil health and nutrient density beyond organic versus conventional farming, published by David Montgomery and Anna Bikle in 2021. So it's quite a big study. So again, I'm not sure if we'll be able to go through everything because I wasn't able to cut out things because everything is so important, but we'll try our best. So going into abstract. So the studies looking at the nutrient density of crop grown organically or using other conventional methods date back to 1940 in US. Modern studies show that tillage, which is also applied in organic production, and synthetic nitrogen fertilizers can influence soil health in a way that reduces mineral micronutrient uptake by and phytochemical production in crops. And microbial inoculants as compost or mulch can actually build soil organic matter and increase crop micronutrients and phytochemical content. So a review of a previous study and meta-studies show a little evidence for significant difference in crop macronutrients and micronutrients level between organic and conventional products. However, there have been differences recorded between organic and conventional crops in levels of pesticides and phytochemicals, which can also provide a lot of health protective, antioxidant, and anti-inflammatory properties. And this study really goes in deeply into those differences. So due to this lack of alignment in nutritional difference between organic and conventional crops, there appears to be different in definition of what constitutes a nutrient. So is a nutrient something that is necessary for growth and survival as macro and micronutrients, or is it more a compound that is beneficial for maintenance of health and prevention of chronic diseases as, for example, phytochemicals? And agronomic effects on nutritional profiles do not fall out simply along the conventional/organic distinction. You need to measure the effects of farming practices on soil health as a better lens for assessing their influence on nutrient density. Introduction of the study. So in 20th century, agronomic practices of frequent mechanical tillage and chemical fertilizations, as well as application of pesticides, replaced traditional practices of incorporating cover crops and diverse crops rotations. So focus on higher yields, greater crop protein content, and chemical pest control change the soil life, leading to deflection of micronutrients and phytochemicals, which are important nutrients for human health. And human perception of soil fertility evolved from godly endowment in ancient times, an element that was imposed by either climate or geology, with modification through the farming practices and human influence on soil. Soil health is defined as the capacity of soil to function as a living ecosystem that sustains plants, animals, and people. And two primary ways that farming practices influence the soil health is the physical loss of topsoil, which is the erosion, and loss of soil organic matter, soil structure, and soil life, which is the soil degradation. So frequent tillage in both organic and conventional farming leads to serious degradation and erosion of soils. And despite the recognition that conventional practices led to influence on soil health, hence the nutritional profile of our food already in mid-20th century, due to lack of mechanistic understanding of the processes that really stopped this knowledge to be accepted in broader circles. And the advancement of soil ecology revealed that soil health plays a major role in building soil fertility as well as nutritional quality of our food. So to finish up the introduction, agriculture has degraded as much as 1/3 of the world's potential farmland, and according to a recent UN report, humanity remains on track to degrade another third of global agriculture production over the course of this century. And post-colonial farming practices reduce soil organic matter by around half, and land degradation already adversely affect the well-being of more than 3 billion people globally. And soil health is centered to nutrient cycling and delivery of crop through microbial symbiosis that bolster plant health and defense, indicates a likely potential for substantial agriculture impacts on the crop micronutrients and phytochemicals. The nutrient density of food can be qualified in terms of the number of nutrients per calorie, the ratio of nutritional value of energy intake. So they look into like 3 different elements of how can you perceive nutrients. So in general, nutrient can be defined as substance essential for growth and maintenance of life. Then we have macro and micronutrients, macronutrients are needed in quantity, and micronutrients for which small amounts are essential for normal metabolism or a key coenzyme and cofactor for proteins. And we have phytochemicals, which is a dietary intake levels have to be established for phytochemicals, because right now I think there is more than 8,000 phytochemicals, so it's also quite difficult to analyze all of them. Some of the phytochemicals consist of polyphenols, flavonoids, and anthocyanins. Now recognize that they have significant protective, antioxidant, and anti-inflammatory effect relevant to human health. So studies over the past several decades clearly established that soil life influences both mineral uptake and phytochemical production in numerous crops. So the focus of the study was to look into reviews and advance our understanding of how farming practices that affect soil health influence nutrient density through disrupting or cultivating beneficial soil life. And in the light of these connections, the paper also re-examines study of differences in crop nutritional profiles in conventional and organic farming systems, and suggests that the effects of farming practices on health provide a better lens for assessing impacts on the nutritional composition of food crops. So first they went into soil health, soil life, and farming practices. And there will be a lot of text, so get ready for it. So conventional metrics for assessing soil quality focus on physical and chemical factors as bulk, density, and pH. However, soil organic matter content and soil biodiversity are increasingly recognizing as a key aspect of soil health. So this review shows that regular tillage and liberal application of synthetic nitrogen influence soil life in ways that alter the abundance and community composition of soil bacteria, fungi, and larger life forms such as earthworms. Tillage and chemical fertilizers affect soil health by reducing soil organic matter and the diversity and the abundance of soil life, and those changes can influence nutrient cycling, crop mineral uptake, and phytochemical production. So tillage, which is primarily used as a weed control in both organic and conventional farming, degrades soil organic matter by stimulating a burst of microbial activity and has a negative impact on the earthworms population. Long-term farming trials, some were run over a century, found loss of more than half of the total biomass of earthworms on conventional fields. 20-year study which compared the soil quality under conventional and no-till farming in New Zealand found that no-till fields had almost as many worms as found in unplowed pasture, whereas conventionally tilled fields had virtually no worms and a third of half the microbes of the unplowed fields. So tillage also decreased the diversity of some fungi and bacteria, and particularly disrupts root-like fungi hypea, reducing delivery of mineral elements to plants from fungi. symbiosis. So just to finish up on plowing, plowing shifts soil life to bacteria-dominate communities with a lower ratio of fungi to bacterial biomass, making bacteria play a dominant role in the decomposition of organic matter in tillage systems, whereas fungi and herbivores play a bigger role in the no-tillage system. So due to the tillage that result in a burst of bacteria-driven degradation of soil organic matter, fields in tropical regions can be tilled economically for around less than a decade without supplemental fertilization, where it can take more than half a century for a comparable loss and dependence on supplemental fertilization to develop in temperate grassland soils. And it wasn't really explained in the study why, so I called Marco, which is our agronomic consultant, and he told me that it's because the decomposition in warmer climate just happens on much faster level. So every 5 degrees up, so from, if there is in tropics, there's 25, 30 degrees on average, just everything goes very quickly. So that's why the soil becomes depleted much faster than in lower temperature regions. So synthetic nitrogen, now they cover tillage, and now we go to synthetic fertilization. So synthetic nitrogen fertilizers reduce the abundance and diversity of mycorrhizal fungi, which is this symbiotic association between fungus and a plant. So some of the field scale and experimental studies show that higher nitrogen fertilizers select less mutualistic fungi. That also was not explained in the study, but I look it up, and mutualistic fungi is the relationship with other organisms, and in mutualism, both organisms benefit from this relation, so both the plant and the fungi and the bacteria, over mycorrhizal fungi that prefer, if we apply lots of nitrogen fertilizations, this fungi is being disregarded over mycorrhizal fungi that preferentially take up mineral like zinc and phosphorus and deliver them to crops. Several meta-analyses shows that mycorrhiza increase zinc concentration by almost a third across a range of crops, so disrupting soil microbial communities affect crop mineral uptake. And continuing on the fertilization, most plants have 2 pathways for acquiring minerals: a direct pathway of passive absorption, taking up minerals dissolved in the water that roots pull up from the soil, and a second, more active pathway that runs through fungi partnership. So different genes in the plants govern those pathways. So using phosphorus as an example, particular genes upregulate the root exudate production when this nutrient is scarce, and downregulated when phosphorus is in abundance. So that suggests that crop receiving a steady diet of chemical fertilization lack of the recurring fungi partners, resulting in a lower mineral uptake. And numerous studies have documented that nitrogen-rich fertilizers reduce phytochemical production related to plant defense, like the phenolic compounds in foliage. And phenolic compounds has anti-aging, anti-inflammatory, antioxidant, and anti-proliferative agent. Also, decreased nitrogen availability generally increase the content of defensive compounds in crops, enhancing disease resistance at the expense of growth. So now we move to the soil health. Numerous studies show that farming practices strongly affect 2 key aspects of soil health, which is soil organic matter and the community composition of soil life. A 12-year study comparison of conventionally tilled to no-tilled fields showed that no-till farm resulted in higher soil organic matter, greater microbial biomass, and greater level of plant available zinc in the soil. Introducing a cover crop increased the amount of plant available iron in the soil. That was the same study, I think. A review of 54 field studies found that less intensive tillage combined with cover cropping greatly increased mycorrhizal colonization of crop roots. Minimal tillage or non-tillage methods increases microbial biomass and enzyme activity. And I think enzyme activity in general is also super important, as we are eating like quite dead food which have depleted enzymatic activity. So growing cover crops further increase soil microbial biomass and diversity. Crop rotation, or the lack of it, also affect the diversity and composition of mycorrhizal fungi. Experiments done in University of Kentucky in 1990 showed that crop rotation dramatically altered the community composition of mycorrhizal fungi, with greater fungi richness and diversity in rotated crops than in continuously cultivated ones. So depending on which crops were grown and in what order, the soil microbial community shifted rapidly from one crop to the next in ways that promoted either mutualistic or pathogenic interaction. So now we're looking at soil health and organic agriculture. So the combination of no-till and cover crops increase both soil organic matter and soil health. An analysis of over 7,000 observations from 8 of US regions found that combining reduced tillage with planting cover crops increased soil organic matter levels, and that diversified cropping system attained the highest levels. A global meta-analysis of organic farming systems found that the combination of conservational tillage, which is not totally removal of tillage, but just reduction of tillage as much as possible, with cover cropping and organic amendments greatly enhance soil health through increased soil organic matter and microbial biomass. Organic practices generally increase both microbial diversity and abundance despite typical reliance on tillage for the weed control. And that is supported with analysis of 56 studies from around the world, report direct comparison of paired conventional or organic farm fields with the same soil type over an average of 16 years. And the organic farm soils hosted substantially greater microbial biomass, microbial activity, and diversity than conventional farm soils. Specifically, microbial biomass, carbon and nitrogen were 41 and 51% higher, respectively, on the organic plots than the conventional plots. And the organic plots had between 32 to 74 more microbial enzyme activity. Most of the studies reviewed found significant difference in the composition of the soil community, with organic farming practices increasing the abundance and activity of soil life. Continuing on the organic agriculture, a more recent review concluded that studies demonstrate convincing evidence that livestock manure enhance soil health and crop growth, although the benefits depend on the properties of a manure as well as specific farming practices, soil type, and regional climate. Another study also found that using clover as green manure in conjunction with nitrogen fertilizers improve soil health, grain yields, and grain nutritional content. Another recent study also showed that diverse cover crops enhance soil health, and that compost and other soil health building practices suppress soil-borne plant pathogens. A study done in France for over 14 years tracked the response of soil both in conventional and organic farming plots. Also addressed conservational agriculture practices with minimal tillage. They tilled 3 out of 4 years, and pesticides were only used upon exceeding an economical damage threshold. And within those practices, there was visible life form as earthworms and arthropods increased 2 to 25 folds, and microorganisms, which were bacteria and fungi, increased by 30 to 70%. So the conservational agriculture, which is the minimum disturbance in the soil, Practices increase soil life across the board. Organic practices mainly increase bacteria and earthworm population.
Can I just say something?
Yes.
I think it's interesting because this shows that we don't need to be organic to be regenerative. We know that the farming reality doesn't mean necessarily that farmers are going to switch immediately to not using pesticides or fertilizers. They're quite dependent on this, especially economically. So just the reduction and the implementation of other techniques can also have outcomes that are considered to be regenerative, even though they apply chemicals once in a while.
Totally. Thank you for this. We go on? Okay, so a recent review concluded that studies demonstrate convincing evidence. No, we already did that, sorry. I came back. Yeah, so microbiome. Plants actively shape their microbiome through the release of root exudates, which is this complex mixture of soluble organic substances that is released from the roots. And those exudates help to repel pathogens and assist in nutrient acquisition and phytochemical production. So soil microbiome affects root exudates production, and this in turn influences soil conditions, indicating that farming practices that affect soil community composition affect root exudates in a ways that influence mineral uptake and phytochemical production that affects the crop health in the fence. Which I think I read it like 10 times, and I've had really difficulty to fully understand what does it mean. But they gave an example that diversifying the crop grown in a field can increase their mineral density, and intercropping diverse plants together in the same field, as it's commonly practiced in Asia, Africa, and Latin America, can increase mineral density in crops. So farming practices that affect soil health and the abundance and diversity of soil communities could influence the micronutrients and phytochemical content of our food. Environmental influences are also important, as genetic variation in controlling mineral and phytochemical levels in crops, which can vary over 100 folds, and the manner in which crops are cultivated and livestock are raised also influence the levels of minerals in our food. So organic farming tends to rely on tillage and weed control, and conventional farming, which relies on synthetic nitrogen fertilizer, can adversely impact soil health, hence micronutrients and phytochemical production. And to finish up on the microbiome, with the current body of evidence, it's reasonable to hypothesize that in addition to the known effects of crop breeding, microbial community disruption due to the degraded soil health contributed to the historical declines of mineral, micronutrients, and phytochemicals in our food. And evidence of this connection emerged in early days of now conventional practices, because a lot of those studies actually dated back to 1940 already. So now we are looking at early studies of nitrogen fertilization. So in considering the dietary implication of intensive nitrogen fertilizers use, agronomists tend to focus on yields and protein content, especially of grains, as protein incorporate nitrogen. Synthetic nitrogen fertilizers generally increase protein concentration in grains and pulses. So research came to note that potential adverse influence of nitrogen fertilizers and other now conventional farming practices on vitamin content and mineral density long before the microbial roots of such a connection were understood. So already back in 1940, study found that nitrogen and potassium fertilizers decreased calcium uptake by vegetables. An example of the study was fertilizing turnips. Green turnips with synthetic nitrogen reduced their calcium content by more than a third in 4 out of 5 trials. So 30% in 4 out of 5 trials, in Mississippi, and significantly reduced crop iron content in almost half of the locations studied. There was another study also done in the same time period, showed that nitrogen fertilizers reduce the vitamin content of grapefruit juice and pepper pods, but increase the vitamin C content of some crops. So there's definitely, you will see also later, like not all of the study, of course, show exactly the same results. Some of the study does show that fertilization actually improves some of the crop qualities. Early studies reported that the mineral content of crops to be variable, reflecting, among others, the soil in which the food was grown. Regional studies found that vitamin C content of turnip greens varied several times between farms, then from the effect of using the chemical fertilizers. So the iron content of leafy greens varied twofold and turnip greens varied fourfold. And areas with the highest proportion of anemic children were those with low soil iron. And differences in the iron content of vegetables did not reflect the soil and iron content. So that was also very interesting, I think. So the nutrient density did not simply reflect the amount of iron in the soil, but how much of it actually goes into the crop. And that's why it's so important to look at the role of synergistic soil fungi. Generally was overlooked in the conventional views of what made mineral elements available to the plant. But that was back in 1940. So more recent studies found that large variation in mineral and phytochemical levels between different cultivars of the same crop. So that means different breeds. And the studies dated back from 1980 and 90s showed that there was difference between, for example, calcium level among variety of snap beans varied by a factor of 2. In blackberries, mineral micronutrients level vary greatly. Beta-carotene levels in broccoli, antioxidants and phytochemicals in broccoli. Folate levels in red beet vary fourfolds, as well as in papaya. Variation of vitamin C among different tomatoes variety. So different breeds and farming system led to variability in micronutrients and phytochemicals, which is a reoccurring kind of finding of the study that was shown in this review. Systemic review in 1993 found that synthetic nitrogen fertilizers significantly influence the vitamin content of plants. The global review found substantial evidence that the typical high rates of nitrogen fertilizers used on the farm greatly decrease the vitamin C content of fruits and vegetables that account for major sources in human diet. Magnitude of vitamin C loss varied in different crops. The decrease could be quite significant, with reported reduction between 34% in cabbage and 50% in fruits. Nitrogen fertilization also reduced a level of vitamin E, and the study found that nitrogen fertilizers generally increase the protein and nitrate content of crops, which is, of course, the nitrate content. It's not really favorable, and we don't really want to have increase of nitrates in our diet, as we have to break them down in our microbiome to nitrates, which then can be excreted, but they are carcinogenic. So another of the study considered the combination of reduced vitamin C content and increased nitrate content particularly problematic for human health, because vitamin C inhibits the digestion production of the carcinogenic compounds from nitrate. So the researcher cautioned that the additional investigation was needed, as nitrate level could reach potentially dangerous level. So now we go to nutrient density, which I think is especially interesting for us. It is generally accepted that organic farming supports more active soil biology and thus greater nutrient cycling, but controversy surrounds potential nutritional differences between conventional and organic crop. Divergent studies, design, and the potential for confounding factors to blur differences help fuel arguments over the support health benefits of organically grown food. Other factors known to influence nutrient density include the particular crop variety of cultivar, the nature of the soil, and even the weather as the crop grows. The following review of prior studies, however, suggests that evaluating the effects of farming practices on nutritional depend on whether one limits the definition of nutrients to dietary components essential for growth and survival, or also considering those that support health. So again, the difference between simply looking at macronutrients versus looking at micronutrients and phytochemicals. There was a 12-year study done in 70s that compared the nutritional value of crop fertilized with either farmyard manure, biodynamic compost, or an NPK fertilization. And crops grown with farmyard manure or compost contain more protein, vitamin C, phosphorus, potassium, and calcium. Remarkably, spinach had 77% more of iron, which I think is especially very important, as right now there's so many people going vegan and kind of relying on iron as one of the main relying on spinach as one of the main iron production. But as we can see, like the iron the iron that the spinach consists can vary greatly depending on farming practices. So crops grown with NPK has significantly more nitrates and sodium, again nitrates. The study concluded that organic practices produce more nutritious crop. 2 years later, after this study, they also done in 70s, compared vegetables grown in the same soil with either organic or commercial fertilizers, found no difference in major elements as nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, calcium, and magnesium. Such a finding set up a conflicting narratives around potential differences between organic and conventional foods. So again, even though there's many studies showing that there is significant difference even among micronutrients as minerals, some other studies shows that there is not necessarily the case in every soil. So it's not black and white, as we know. In 1984, a German field trial demonstrated that spinach, Swiss chard, lettuce, and corn fertilized with composted farmyard manure, all of those greens had significantly lower nitrate and higher vitamin C concentration than the same crops grown with equivalent amount of synthetic nitrogen fertilizer. And complementary experiments showed that higher compost application decreased the nitrate content several folds in potted spinach despite the higher total supply of nitrogen. A parallel comparison of nitrate concentration in lettuce from 7 paired conventional and organic farm also found a lot less nitrates in organic lettuce. Another early comparison, which was also published in Journal of Applied Nutrition, reported significant difference in the mineral content of organic and conventional produce purchased in suburban Chicago grocery stores. Over a 2-year period, organically grown wheat, corn, potatoes, apples, and pears had an average between 60 to 125% more zinc, iron, calcium, phosphorus, magnesium, and potassium relatively to conventionally grown counterparts. A number of studies and meta-studies that compared conventional or organic foods reported a wide range of result and conclusion, yet some patterns do emerge from both meta-studies and per-farm plot experiments. So now we go to meta-studies. So meta-studies typically lump a wide range of practices together under the label of conventional and organic. So despite the high variable physical environments of agricultural settings and the wide range of cultivation methods allowed and soil health achieved under both farming systems. So of course that creates a lot of, inconsistency within what are the conclusions of a certain meta-study. Additional factors that are complicated assessing, as differences include in the effect of the soil type, crop variabilities, what climate they are grown, what season is in which season is the trial made, and the different experimental design between studies. Also, legacies of past farming practices can matter as well, as published studies comparing conventional organic crop generally fail to take soil health into account or how long organic fields have been worked using organic methods. A review done in 2001 looked into 41 studies which reported that on average organic crop had a fifth more to almost a third more vitamin C, iron, and magnesium. Organic crops consistently had higher overall levels of mineral micronutrients due to the author's suggestion that was connected to the soil life. Conversely, conventional crops had more heavy metals in them, and in addition, nitrate levels were significantly higher in conventional foods, for almost 3/4 of 176 comparison. Organic food averaged 15% less in nitrates, and conventional food had up to 8 times more of it. Similar research done in France reported that organic food contained higher amounts of both minerals and antioxidants than conventionally grown ones. A study done in 2005 found that lower nitrate content and higher vitamin C content consistently differentiate organic from conventional potatoes. A 2001 meta-study of micronutrient composition that control for both crop variety, so different breeds, and soil condition found higher levels in organic vegetables and legumes than in conventional ones, with overall difference up to 10% in beta-carotene, vitamin C, boron, copper, and zinc. However, those studies also screened for the same cultivar and soil conditions, reported that the micronutrient content of organic food ranged up to 50% higher than the conventional produce. Meta-study that looked into 223 studies of nutrient levels and contaminants in a wide range of foods reported that conventional produce consistently had significantly higher level of pesticide residue and antibiotic-resistant bacteria. And organic produce had higher levels of phenols. So the authors found no significant difference of potassium, calcium, magnesium, and iron, or for vitamin A and C. They concluded that the organic food was no more nutritious than conventional food, despite the conventional food having more pesticides and problematic bacteria, along with fewer health-promoting phenols that are still considered to be nutrients. A meta-study of 343 peer-reviewed publication, which was published in British Journal of Nutrition, concluded that organic crops contain significantly higher concentration of antioxidants and that conventionally grown crop came with greater levels of pesticides residue and the heavy metal cadmium. The authors estimated that people consuming organically grown foods would take in 20 to 60% more phytochemicals than if they would eat conventional food. Review from 2001 had a similar conclusion as the previous one, finding that the plant metabolites related to defense were 10 to 50% higher in organic vegetables than in conventional vegetables. A follow meta-analysis a decade later also found significantly more phytochemicals in organic fruits and vegetables. And the most recent meta-analysis that look exclusively at reports done after year 2000 due to the concerns about earlier experimental designs and changing measurement techniques. Just like previous studies, they found out that organically grown food had higher levels of vitamins and phytochemicals, particularly antioxidants, carotenoids, flavonoids, and phenolic compounds. The review also found that conventionally grown fruits and vegetables consistently had higher pesticide levels, a finding also in line with previous studies. Now we'll look into paired farms and long-term plot studies. So there have been several studies done with this design to compare the effects of farming practices on aspects of crop nutrient density in pair farms and long-term plots. Study done in Burgundy and Jura in 1890. No, I think it was 1990. Yeah, sorry, it's a mistake. Assess the effects of organic and conventional fertilizers on the vitamin and mineral content of carrots and celery roots. The comparison involved 24 sets of paired farms grown in the same crop variety in the same soil type. So the organic carrots had about 12% more beta-carotenoid and vitamin B, and the organic celery had about 11% more vitamin C and less than half of nitrates of the conventional counterparts. A study done on strawberries compared 13 organic and conventional farms in California found that organic ones had significantly higher levels of polyphenols, vitamin C, and antioxidant. This comparison also found that conventional strawberries had higher concentration of phosphorus and potassium, which is interesting. Again, not everything black and white. In addition, soil carbon and nitrogen levels were higher in the originally farmed soil, as were microbial biomass and genetic diversity, as well as level of plants available iron and zinc. A comparison of samples from 30 organic and 30 conventional farms in central India also found that organic wheat had higher zinc content than conventional ones, around 20%, and the researcher attributed these differences in the influence of soil biology. Healthier soils on the organic farms translated into more zinc in the harvested grain. Studies that look at factors affecting crop growth and health make well-controlled long-term studies of phytochemical levels in organic and conventional grown crop are rare. An example of this research was a 10-year study that documented a mean level of quercetic and camphorol.
Quercetin.
Quercetin.
It's a very powerful antioxidant. Quercetin,
amazing. Yeah, 2 phytochemicals known to benefit human health. Do you know how quercetin benefits human health?
It's an antioxidant.
Okay, awesome.
It's a type of antioxidant, yeah.
Awesome. Super. So they found that 79 to 97% higher of those 2 phytochemicals, antioxidants, respectively in organic grown tomatoes, while flavonoids levels in the organic regrown tomatoes increased over time as the organic matter content of the soil increased. The flavonoids content of the conventional tomatoes stayed relatively constant over the decade-long study. In other words, as soil health improved, so did the tomatoes' quality. So increased soil organic matter generally makes micronutrients more plant available. A study done in Ethiopia in 2018 found that along with yield, the protein and zinc content of wheat grain more closely tracked level of soil organic matter than mineral fertilizer application. Soil organic matter was the strongest predictor for zinc content in wheat, leading the research to conclude that increasing soil organic matter could increase crop nutrients content through enough to improve human health. A study of zinc level in wheat grown in central India found that organic wheat that produced comparable yields had almost 20% more zinc than conventionally grown wheat. And then one of the last things within this chapter is some other studies. Several studies had addressed how farming practices influence concentration of dietary antioxidants and other phytochemicals in food crops. A review of European Journal of Nutrition found agronomic practices could increase the content of beneficial phytochemicals tenfold in broccoli and cauliflower and double them in radishes. A study that assessed level of vitamin C and total phenolics in strawberries, marionberries, and corn showed that they had been So a study that assessed this vitamin C in strawberries and other berries and corn that has been grown conventionally versus sustainable and organic practices, comparing the same variety of each crop grown on fields on the same farm in Cornwallis in Oregon, showed that were harvested and that they were harvested at the same time, then immediately quick frozen, found that vitamin C and total phenolic levels in the sustainable grown strawberries were around 20% higher than in conventional strawberries, and both organic and sustainably grown Marion berries and corn held a total phenolic content more than 50% compared to conventionally grown ones. Studies of organic versus conventionally grown tomatoes and tomato juice also found that organic variety had significantly higher levels of polyphenols associated with lower risk of cardiovascular disease and certain types of cancers. A French study found that organically grown tomatoes had higher vitamin C, carotenoids, and polyphenol levels. Another Australian study compared wheat grown under organic and conventional management found that there was no difference in micronutrients, but more copper and more to have more zinc in organic wheat. Organic management and fertilization practices have been found to increase total phenolics in eggplants, pears, peaches, corn, apples, marionberries, and blueberries. Studies have shown that while fertilizing with sulfur increases phytochemical abundance, nitrogen fertilizer does the opposite and can decrease the number of glucosinolates, which is a secondary metabolite in broccoli, up to 70%. Brazilian study found organic cultivation deliver higher total phenol and flavonoid content in peels of zucchini, squash, banana, potatoes, eggplants, oranges, limes, mangoes, passion fruits, and radishes, and at the leaves level of zucchini, squash, broccoli, carrot, collard, cassava, radish, and grapes, as well as the stalks of broccoli, collard, and spinach. Nutritional density also depends on the variety of the bread. A study of potato cultivation in Italy found that for certain varieties, organic farming practices resulted in more phenolics, less nitrates, and better taste. A Spanish study found that certain Japanese plums cultivars grown using organic practices had significantly higher polyphenols and antioxidants concentration and greater total antioxidant capacity than conventionally raised plums. Japanese research compared flavonoids content along with the antioxidant, antioxidative and anti-mutagenic properties of Chinese cabbage, spinach, Welsh onion, green pepper, and chingen kai, I never saw this vegetable, harvested on the same day from the adjected organic and conventional farm. And the organic vegetables again had a higher antioxidant level between 20 to 120% and better suppressed mutation in cells cultures. In addition, flavonoids contents were higher in organic than in conventional vegetables, with quercetin levels up to 10 times higher. One of the longest studies done by Rodale, which looked at the influence of farming practices on the nutritional quality of food, shown that on average, oats from the organic systems had roughly a third higher mineral content, ranging from 7% of potassium to 74% more of boron, with 23% more of iron and 40% more zinc. Vegetables are grown under the two systems in 2005, also had larger difference in total antioxidants and vitamin C. Organically grown tomatoes and jalapeno peppers respectively had 36 and 80% more vitamin C. Organic carrots had 29% higher total antioxidant level as well. Conventionally managed crop had a lower biological activity than the cover-cropped organic soil, showing that a healthy soil with more soil life were producing more nutrient than crops. Leading to discussion. So that would be basically summary. Conventional foods adds to food pesticides and heavy metals. There appears to be little evidence for difference in macronutrients. However, there are studies which date back to decades report that significant difference in micronutrients, vitamins, minerals. There are consistent findings showing significantly more phytochemicals in organic foods, a result usually overlooked as they are not considered nutrients despite their known connection to human health. Confusion if the farming practices affect nutritional value of food seems to come from different definition of nutritional value, macronutrients, micronutrients, or phytochemicals. Many nutritionists generally do not consider phytochemicals as nutrients per se, as they do not have caloric value. Yet many of those compounds have demonstrated connection to maintaining good health and prevention in chronic diseases. Most agronomic comparison, however, tend to focus on yields rather than nutritional quality, and the studies have found that the effects of farming practices that enhance soil health can also increase yields. A global study done in 2014 reviewed that a healthy earthworms population boosts crop yields by an average of 25%, enough of an increase to close the often cited yield gap between organic and conventional farming. Some studies show that a decrease of 10% in organic crops. That was a study of review of 205 comparison. However, from this study, only half of the studies have been statistically significant, and the quarter of the study actually showed the organic to outperform the conventional farming. Soil health could play an important factor to close the yield gap. So what is the relevance for human health? Well, soil biodiversity provides a range of benefits to human health through suppression of pathogens and enhancing crop nutrient uptake and thereby the nutritional value of food. Numerous studies find that farming practices that affect soil life influence mineral uptake and phytochemical production. And the most consistent finding of the study that compare organic and conventional practices are significant difference in phytochemical production. Difference in the phytochemical content of food are relevant to preventing inflammation and reducing risk of chronic diseases. Certain phytochemicals boost human anti-inflammatory defense and make malignant cells valuable to immune system attack. Medical research attributes the cancer-suppressing effect of consuming more fruits and vegetables to the antioxidant and anti-inflammatory phytochemicals that these foods contain. There are several studies that investigate whether dietary difference impact human health. A study done in Sweden on children found a significantly higher risk of allergic conditions among those from public schools than those from a nearby Steiner school, catering to families that emphasize a biodynamic, vegetable-rich organic diet. Comparison that involved 15,000 European children found those from public schools who ate more conventional diet had higher incidence of asthma and food allergies. A pair of Danish studies reported sperm counts were highest among men who consumed their most organic produce and lowest among those who consume only conventional produce. Another Danish study showed that a dietary intervention employing a double-blinded, randomized cross-design, which is the golden standard in the medical trials. So they fed volunteers a prescribed diet of either conventional or organic diet, and then they monitor their intake and excretion of 5 flavonoids, and then subject switch from eating the conventional organic diet for 22 days. Those who consume an organic diet displayed an increased antioxidant activity and had significantly higher levels of the flavonoids quercentine and camphor in their urine. Quercetin, thank you. The most recent study that tracked medical records over an average of 5 years for about 70,000 French adults stratified participants according to their consumption of organic fruits and vegetables, meat, dairy, eggs, tea, wine, vegetables, and cereals. Those who reported higher organic food consumption also reported higher intakes of fruits and vegetables, obviously, and lower intake of processed meat, poultry, and dairy products. Those consuming the most organic food had roughly a quarter to a third lower risk of cancer than those consuming the least. But the study also accounted that, of course, there were elements as, the degree to education and degree of ability to buy organic food. So there's many elements that have to be taken into consideration. So summarizing, considering altogether the mechanistic and comparative studies reviewed above indicating that the need to focus on how farming practices, both conventional and organic, affect soil health, as soil health affects mineral macronutrients uptake and phytochemical production in crops. And the final slide, we made it. The conclusions. So, progression of research and technology in the last years helped to demonstrate mechanisms underlying the connections in the micronutrient density, which were not available in 1940. There are substantial evidence that farming systems impact micronutrient levels. Conventional crops consistently have higher pesticide level, and organic crops have higher phytochemical levels, particularly antioxidants and anti-inflammatory compounds. And there's a need to reframe nutritional and agricultural research and policy around the effects of farming practices on soil health as simply pacing comparison of the organic versus conventional distinction can blur underlying differences due to the effects of farming system on soil life.